Excellent. So as many of you know, these sessions are a joint production of the Trust for Public Land and the Children in Nature Network in an effort to really support the schoolyard greening efforts that are going on around the country. We're really excited to see folks joining in. Some folks we've seen many times before, and we're happy to see you all again, but some are new. And so we like to use the chat as a way to get to know each other. Would love to be able to introduce everyone individually, but we do make time for a breakout later on in the discussion where you can, share a little bit more one-on-one. So today we're actually going to talk about one of the stickiest issues that face schoolyard greening, and that's schoolyard maintenance. Schoolyard maintenance is something that really comes down to being an equity issue. When you look at places that have pretty substantial tax bases, they might have more capacity for maintenance. You see places that don't, and it can become a challenge to advocate for schoolyard greening when dollars are stretched thin. And so what we want to do in this discussion today is learn a little bit about what's working, where some challenges are, and we know they are there, and really take the time in our breakout to discuss a little bit more in detail. I think there might be some next steps that come from this conversation. It's certainly something that we've been talking about a lot in the Trust for Public Land, and really excited to hear what others are doing in the schoolyard maintenance space right now. So to kind of get us thinking about this in more detail, I'm really happy to introduce Emma Melvin and Kari Sanino from, Emma is from the Philadelphia School District, and she manages the Schoolyard Green Infrastructure Program. And Kari is from the Trust for Public Land and manages our Parks for People program. And so the Philadelphia, environment is certainly, it's the largest big city, it's the poorest, largest big city, and the school district has tried many different things to address lots of different challenges, including maintenance. And they have some innovations that, Emma's going to share. And, I think Kari is going to share a little bit more about how nonprofits can support the efforts of the school districts. So with that, I will turn it over and then we can discuss afterwards. Thank you. Emma, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. Okay, so my name is Emma Melvin. I'm the Green Stormwater Infrastructure Program Manager. I've been with the school district for about 3 years. And just so you know, if you have any questions, you can break into the presentation for a quick question or hold it, put it in the chat or hold it for the end. So the school district of Philadelphia has been installing green infrastructure for a while. I think one of their first designs was in 2006. They were one of the original partners on Philadelphia Water Department's or the City of Philadelphia, the Green Cities Clean Waters Plan. We're one of the largest landowners in Philadelphia, and a great hub to demonstrate how greening and green infrastructure can multifaceted benefits for the community. Currently, we have 58 sites, so campuses and fields with stormwater management systems on them. We have 46 that are being currently managed and 12 that are currently in construction that will be completed and maintained after installed. We have 23 sites that have surface features, so rain gardens, and 8 of the new systems being constructed have rain gardens. We have 3 schools that have green roofs and one in planning, and 8 schools that are the stormwater management feature is de-pave itself, where large areas of asphalt were removed and greening was installed. Then we have 3 functioning porous asphalt systems. I say that because we have 3 additional porous asphalt systems that are failing. And they were our earlier systems, and it mostly is dealt with our design of the site. We also have a very urban footprint for our schools. So many of our larger redevelopment where it's a full new school, we just don't have the capacity to do surface features that are full stormwater management. So we have 16 sites that are solely, their main stormwater management feature is a subsurface system, in addition to smaller greening included. And then we have 3 cisterns that are used in gray water systems. So you'll see that most of our systems, it's a list of all the schools that have stormwater management on it. We have a lot of school sites that have multiple features. So be it a rain garden and porous surfaces with subsurface, stormwater management and greening, all in one site, managing the site's stormwater rather than one particular feature. And you'll see that we have sites all over the city. So you also see that there are sites that the areas of the city that are missing, and I'll talk about that later on in the presentation, but we are constantly developing and redeveloping and doing voluntary stormwater management. As I mentioned, we have 12 sites for this year to be installed. 2 major additions that are gonna have stormwater management. We are partnering with an initiative called Resilient Stormwater Community Initiative, funded by William Penn Foundation. Forgot to mention that's actually how our program was initiated, through a grant from the William Penn Foundation that funded my position as an integrated position, where I am originally funded through the grant, and then facilities and capital then take over the responsibility of paying my salary. But we are working with them to identify priority schools for vulnerable communities to do stormwater management. And then everything is waylaid currently for our voluntary stormwater management, because we're in the process, and many school districts are familiar with this process of facilities master plans, where we are reviewing all the conditions of our school districts, school buildings and parking and fields, in addition to the utilization of the school and the appropriate accommodation of the school for the student needs. So because of this master planning, we are the voluntary stormwater management is on hold. So as a major issue for our partners at Trust for Public Land, because we can't go into a partnership to do new voluntary stormwater management schools until we start up our facilities master plan again. Hopefully that will occur shortly, but it's a big hurdle at the moment. But the reason why we are maintaining our systems is that we were required to maintain our systems. We went into compliance because we were not maintaining our systems, and because we do systems at 3 different strategies in our when we build new schools for a large redevelopment. So we tear down the old school and we do the whole shebang, parking, school, everything. We're required to do stormwater management for redevelopment sites where we're doing repaving a parking lot or redoing an athletic field, or via voluntary stormwater management. We are required to do maintenance on all of these systems. And so we'll be doing it either way, because we have already are assigned a fee for our stormwater. PWD has a stormwater fee for all existing developments. What's nice, when you have a stormwater system in Philadelphia, you are able to apply for a credit. This has enabled the school district to fund our maintenance program, because with the 46 schools that we currently maintain, our annual stormwater fee is around $1 million. The credits we receive as an offset is around 600,000, and so that's a little bit more than what our maintenance contract is. We actually usually
Christian Creaky of the University of the Virgin Islands, cohort
number. We usually don't spend the whole 600,000, but that's the offset we're receiving from our stormwater management that we're doing on our sites. Our systems usually contain at minimum a stormwater management system. So it could be a rain garden, could be a deep pave. But typically all of them have all the other components: inlets, catch basins, yard drains, manholes, observation wells, you name it, outlet obstructions, and all those parts need to be maintained and inspected every 4 years by PWD. So we're currently in compliance, but we have a maintenance contract to ensure that we stay in compliance. So I inspect all our sites monthly to then assign maintenance activities to our contracted landscape contractor. So we work with a company called Greenup. Their sole focus is GIS maintenance. So we contract them to do litter cleanup, vegetation maintenance. That includes weeding, pruning, planting. We work with a subsurface contractor to clean all our inlets, to do any specific repairs to our subsurface systems, to do sediment removal, and other like subsurface activities. So if we're doing need a camera to look at our pipes or our systems, we do that with our maintenance contractor. But school district maintenance staff do additional maintenance on our sites because we have infrastructure as a component of the system. So we repair any fencing, and this is through our maintenance department in the school district. We maintain any damaged masonry or asphalt or concrete repairs, any damaged pervious surfaces such as our artificial turf or our play surfaces. That's all done through our maintenance department through work orders that I put in. But when you see our map, you do see that there are open areas that work has not been done in. And so part of the review of where we've done green infrastructure, we started wondering why we haven't done work in certain communities. At the same time, our capital team was getting a lot of pressure from the school district on how we were selecting our schoolyard redesign sites. We partner with Trust for Public Land on these projects, and then we partner with a lot of community organizations or as a part of just a capital program to redo schoolyards. So the whole kit and caboodle: greening, play structures, artificial turf, outdoor classrooms. And we're getting a lot of pressure on like, how are we picking the communities we are working on? In turn, we started talking with one of our grantors about this issue, about developing a vulnerability assessment to kind of identify the most in-need communities and to provide equitable support for all our schools. Some schools will have the capacity to fundraise, will have the capacity to do project management and to work with the community members or support an internal effort to do this, either a greening project or a playground project. Some schools will be in between, and some schools will be battling with so many other community issues that they don't have the capacity. So how do we rank and identify these communities? And we worked with the Academy of Natural Science to and modified their vulnerability assessment. And that looked at the social, economic and environmental impacts. A series of parameters that include health impacts like cardiovascular disease or asthma or COPD or historic environmental racism, such as high amounts of Superfund sites or highways or low tree canopy, and then the social impacts of low income, single parents, about a handful of other parameters, and we ranked all the schools. And we were looking specifically at our elementary schools and more specifically at schools without play structures. We had to have a cutoff where we said, okay, these are the schools that we're going to be working on. We gave them a ranking using our vulnerability assessment. And then we created a schoolyard design standard that was divided up into large, medium, and small schools. And we had a base standard of what each of those schoolyards needed to have to meet our standard. We also reviewed all the schools that had play structures to see if they were meeting our standards, to see if the structures were in good condition, and if they had any other additional needs for the school. And we created a large schoolyard plan that it was a 5 to 8 year plan that gave all the schools a ranking and also a maintenance plan and a funding strategy to achieve this goal. Again, it was put on hold for the facilities master plan. And if any of you have already done facility master plan, you know how it can be daunting, but a good process for the school district. It just puts other things on hold sometimes. So hopefully that will start up again, and we'll be able to present to the school board our plan and start working on this effort. In addition to large-scale stormwater management, there are some schools that are too small to have any major stormwater management practice installed on this site. And there are schools that have a strong interest in doing greening that we have been working with. In addition, we worked with the city of Philadelphia and the Parks and Rec on their tree filly plan, which is the tree canopy plan. So the school district has a bunch of different goals within that plan that we're trying to work on. And one of them is to achieve the 30% tree canopy goal for all our ground level areas within our school campuses. So in doing that, we're trying to lift some of the barriers to schools on planting trees within their school campus. We have a great tree planting partner. The Pennsylvania Horticultural Society's tree tender program is 30 years of planting in Philadelphia. They struggle with being able to plant in our school campuses because we require a pretty hefty insurance policy for construction work within the schoolyard. And so we have some seed money that we direct towards our maintenance department to do depave and remove the rubble. And then we supply appropriate soils and mulch, and our partner provides the trees. This is a big step forward because, you know, our partners can do a lot of planting on the outside, but really we can't get much small scale work done because we can't get them on our campus. So we're hoping to get more grant money to be able to expand this program and really support schools that are interested in doing tree planting, provide avenues for schools that are already doing watershed education within the school to kind of take it out to their campus. Another project we're working with schools on that have green infrastructure or that are designing green infrastructure for their schoolyard is the Sensible Schoolyards program, where we are fitting sensors, supplying schools with sensors for their green space and their paved space to really make the unseen seen on the impacts of greening in their schoolyard, to have continuously ongoing data collection in our green space and in the paved space to see why greening makes such an impact on the schoolyard and how it transforms the environment around the schools to provide that social emotional respite for the students during recess or during off days. That the green infrastructure is more than just stormwater management. So we're working with Green Futures, which is our sustainability program within the school district, and Fairmont Waterworks. They developed the Understanding Their Urban Watershed curriculum that is focused on introducing stormwater, the water cycle, and then green infrastructure into the school and providing learning activities to go along with it. We're working with our STEM curriculum specialists and the teachers at selected schools to create a learning activity related to these sensors and related to green infrastructure. We're hoping this is a way for a way to pitch green infrastructure to schools that are not used to the aesthetics of some green infrastructure. Sometimes they can feel like it's a little untidy or just aren't used to all the greening. And this is a way to illustrate the multiple benefits and provide the data we need to kind of collect about these impacts. I mean, as people are advocates for green schools, yes, when you're in the space, you know that it made such a transition, but we would love to see data actually really documenting this. So part of my work is really that balancing act. Our schoolyards are so much more than just recess areas. They're parking lots, they're open space, they're stormwater management, they're the community space, they're a learning space for the schools. And I kind of help bridge that gap between our facilities, our maintenance, and the schools on how to envision kind of greening, to communicate the needs and the maintenance to our maintenance team and our facilities, to talk about how the responsibility of the schools and ensuring that these systems function and survive the longevity of the school, and make sure that we have a functioning space. You know, a lot of times these schools, you know, they go from a parking lot to a whole greened area, so they may not know how to request work on the play structure, the artificial turf, or let someone know that a tree was knocked down or they have some other issues. And I kind of am there to help be the bridge, and also be a bridge to some of the community partners that can support them in their efforts. And I know I went super fast. I tend to be a fast talker, but if anyone has questions or comments for me.
Emma, it looks like there's a couple questions in the chat. One from Cynthia. Are the stormwater infrastructure regulations you mentioned earlier coming from the state, federal, or local level? And I saw Stephanie actually here. I don't know if she wants to jump in and talk a little bit about PWD's regulations and how it impacts the program in Philadelphia. But just a real quick story that if it wasn't for the fact that Philadelphia had a consent decree and had stormwater issues that the city had to take care of because of EPA and consent decree and stormwater overflows, there probably wouldn't be a Philadelphia stormwater program that's so robust in the school district. So it's hugely enabling.
Yeah. Stephanie, did you want to talk about it?
Sure. I mean, I'm happy to briefly talk about it. Awesome presentation, Emma and Danielle. Obviously, we work so closely with TPL2, and all this wouldn't be possible with all of you. So, but yeah, in Philly, our Green City Clean Waters program is really focused on addressing combined sewer overflows, and we have a consent order with our regulators, EPA and DEP, to basically manage these overflows. So our combined sewers basically overflow into our creeks and rivers. It's not great. Many municipalities across the country have the same issue. And so we are really trying to address it with more of a green approach. And of course, schools are community anchors in their neighborhoods. So we really wanted to work with public schools really closely to figure out how we can do this. And we've been really lucky to be able to do that through our stormwater grant program. And you know, TPL and School District have been great partners and applicants through that program. We've been trying to figure out some other ways to do this work too. And the other way that some of these projects come about are, you know, through our stormwater regulations. So Philly has a requirement where if you disturb any development or redevelopment disturbs 15,000 square feet of earth disturbance. So basically, if you touch any soil or you know, depave and kind of hit that trigger, you have to manage stormwater on site. And so with that, there's been some really great projects that have come out of those regulations, but I think, really being able to take advantage of our stormwater grant program has been fantastic to adding to the numbers of green schoolyards and really making a difference in Philly. And hopefully we can continue. So
thanks, Stephanie.
Sure.
Another great question in the chat for Emma. What type of air quality monitor do you recommend? Do you happen to have the specifications? I know we worked on those a while ago.
I think we're using AirDrop.
AirDrop.
Okay. Green Futures is the one who Megan Gardner is the one who actually purchased the air quality monitoring equipment, but I think it's called AirDrop. I might be saying that wrong.
Yeah,
what it means is that hopefully this data will help us push the greening aspect of green infrastructure. That's the great part about my review is, I get to kind of talk about the successes of our systems and the failures on the costs and benefits of the different components. And when we push to our subsurface systems, the cost of the systems themselves are more expensive, but the maintenance a lot of times are significant because we have to manage all the sediment that comes into the system and make sure that they don't get into the subsurface system. We have a lot of times have post-treatment systems that are tagged onto these systems, and they're pretty costly to maintain. And designers don't always realize the cost burden that these what look like a very easy system underground under a paved parking lot end up costing the school district. So I am an advocate for pushing the green envelope and to the furthest extent, because it really does make a difference on the maintenance budget.
And then you get the data from the end to help justify the cost on the front side. So all good full cycle thinking. Two more related questions, one from Joan about the sensor, whether it's measuring rainfall or flooding, and then a follow-up to ask if these sensors were purchased individually or if they're part of a full package.
They were purchased individually, but we're measuring rainfall. We have potential to expand the program to add sensors on, but we're starting off basic at this moment, and then allowing the schools to expand the potential for what they're monitoring for. So we have certain weather stations on hand and certain air quality monitors on hand, but we are actually going to be purchasing more sensors as part of that project.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Most of our design effort is going to be how to protect these systems and not the systems themselves. We get a lot of vandalism, so I think we're pushing to be very creative in how we can protect them and keep them on site, or have a system that is readily replaceable if damaged.
Well, that is a good segue into the second part of this conversation. Okay. So we talked a lot about green maintenance, and Emma, thank you so much for your excellent presentation. It's so great to hear the updates. And Akari, I asked to also speak up a little bit about some of the other maintenance considerations that come into play when we think about schoolyards. Emma, you mentioned that these are, full systems. They have playgrounds, they have turf fields, they have recreation areas, site furniture, of course, greening. Kari, can you speak a little bit to some of the other maintenance questions that you sometimes hear as a partner of Emma's in the school district?
Yeah, thanks, Danielle, and thank you, Emma and Stephanie. I think I'm glad you said partner, because I was going to say that all of this sort of after a schoolyard is built, there's so many partnerships that go into taking care of it afterwards, and we try our best to be good partners. TPL isn't responsible for maintaining these schoolyards afterwards, so a lot of what we do is just try to facilitate and see where we can help out as possible. But I was just thinking about like, first of all, as we design schoolyards, how we're thinking about what the maintenance capacity is afterwards, and so we have to start at that baseline and not like, bite off more than can be chewed later on. And then thinking about also how installing a green schoolyard can be this huge change for a school. They're used to just an asphalt parking lot, and it maintains itself to an extent, and then they end up with this big, beautiful schoolyard that they love, but it can kind of forget how much care it can take to keep it looking nice. And that can be anything from, just daily trash accumulation to seasonal jobs, right? So I guess I'll share my screen. I don't have a presentation set up, but maybe it'll just like sort of start a conversation. So I guess I'm starting here in as I said, like schools aren't necessarily prepared for what it means to have a green schoolyard. And so here's a good example of they asked for trash cans, but might have forgotten that somebody's going to have to empty those trash cans every day. And so that's something that we need to be thinking about. So that's in terms of daily maintenance, maybe that, or maybe there's watering for depending if you have like a community garden type style installation or not. But then besides that, it's more like seasonal jobs. And I think we have to balance what the school and the students and the community can do and what they can be expected to do, and what needs to come from the system or from the district or from something that's a little bit more organized. And we try to be equitable in those expectations. Like Emma was saying, like certain schools and certain communities are like really ready to jump in and do that maintenance and learn and be a part of it, and others might not be, and we have to be aware of that when we're thinking about volunteer labor, for instance. So the other thing that I thought I would just bring up is, here's a schoolyard that's not yet built. So here's a plan of it, but I just wanted to kind of go through what we're thinking about as we're designing these types of projects. You can see in the middle, we have an artificial turf field. As much as we would love to have real grass, it's something that isn't necessarily feasible in the district right now. I mean, you have to think about who's going to mow it, and what's going to happen when hundreds of students use it every single day. And so, that's why we end up with artificial turf, and we can warranty that for a certain amount of time and make sure that it stays safe as a play surface for many years. Another thing to think about on this is just kind of what's going to happen to the mulch beds as time goes on. Who's going to be adding in mulch? I have a photo of, once again, a very recent schoolyard. And so this mulch was probably installed about 10 months ago and is already totally gone, because you can imagine there's hundreds of students running through this tree bed every single day. And so I don't want to go into like every single possible problem that we can run into, but it is amazing how many things come up that you may not think about when you're comparing it to a park or a personal garden, where you can kind of control the traffic. In a schoolyard, it seems like everything's fair game. And you have to think about maintenance in terms of just very, very heavy use. And then the other side of things I want to talk about, I kind of divide it in my head. There's maintenance and then there's repairs. And so the maintenance is the kind of thing that we can plan for and think about what needs to happen on a daily, weekly, seasonal basis. And then repairs is what's going to be completely unexpected and going to catch a school off guard, and it may cause a safety risk overnight. If a play structure breaks, or if play safety surface starts to fall apart, or there's vandalism, and often there is. And so when these things happen, there needs to be some system in place to be able to deal with it right away. And I can show more pictures. I brought up, Emma, a report that you sent us you know, like this happens all the time. And it's just awful. Like this is an elementary school, it's K through 4th grade, and we need to kind of be ready to come out there and sand these tables down. It's not something that TPL is currently prepared to do, and it's not something that the school is ready for either. And so we have to figure out who's filling those gaps. I think that I'm just going to leave it there, if that makes sense. But if anybody has any questions or thoughts, I'd love to hear them.
Thank you, Kari, for the dose of reality. It's true. You know, these are spaces that children are using, that community is using, and everything isn't always monitored to a T. And so things happen. And I think that's part of the reason why we wanted to, you know, use this forum to have this conversation, you know, because it is sometimes a barrier to starting new programs. And because there's probably a lot that, as folks who are working on schoolyards that see the multiple amazing benefits all the time, we know that they're really important. How can we navigate around these kinds of issues? And when it really boils down to it, and I want to hear what others think, but it comes down to funding, right? The lack of funding to support maintenance contributes to non-sustained maintenance in different districts, especially in places without, you know, larger levels of capacity. And so is there a role that we can play to advocate for additional maintenance? And I do see a couple folks from our New York City's team on the call, and I know you guys have had some success recently. I wondered if you could just jump off mute and share what has been working, because you guys have been advocating for sustained maintenance for quite some time.
Sure. Thanks, Danielle. Joan here. You guys all know me. We originally were in a kind of spoiled position in our initial partnership with the city to do green schoolyards, where maintenance as part of something called Plan YC 2030 was part of our agreement with the city. They agreed to pay up to $50,000 a year to the custodians of the schoolyards to clean, keep them repaired, open and close the sites during the off hours. Unfortunately, after that partnership was over, at a certain point, that funding pot ran out because the next mayor raided it for his own projects. After that, we spent about 3 years advocating with the city council, many of whom supported some of our projects. So it gave us the capital to do the construction, and we're very disappointed to hear that they didn't get funding to open, as all of our previous yards had. We advocated with them to get funding put back for those schoolyards. So for these 32 schoolyards that were kind of orphaned, I guess I would say, from the program, funding has been restored. However, it's not a line item in the budget. It's in the budget per year. So we still don't have a permanent solution. We're working on getting an advocate in the mayor's office who is going to actually do something, what we want to call kind of like Plan YC 2.0, like revamp the schoolyards program, the schoolyards to playgrounds program, and sort of say, we believe this is at all schoolyards should be like this. So, and we have interest, which is great. We have a really good partnership with the SCA, and we have a really good partnership with the mayor's office on 20 new climate resilient schoolyards, and they're trying to find a way to do this. But advocacy TPL really is the only organization, I think, that could have even gotten as far as we did get in terms of getting maintenance for those 32 other sites. That's a lot of, it costs now $67,000 a year for custodial maintenance of the yards, which seems so high to me, but that's what it is. And we do have it for those 32 sites. So, but I don't think there's another organization that has the connections in those levels of government to do this, or the bandwidth. Like, I feel like individual schools definitely don't have the bandwidth. So that's all I can share about that.
Well, and thanks for your early wins on that, and good luck for your continued advocacy. Priya has a great question in the chat about who needs to be at the table to ensure that maintenance is considered at the front end. And you know, that's like just a question to you, Emma and Kari, and you know, really anybody else here who wants to jump in. It might be just time check. It's 4:12. If folks are okay with it, do you feel okay doing an open conversation with everybody instead of the breakouts? Because I feel like this is a good space to continue to talk. Yeah, we're hearing that. Okay. So who wants to jump off and respond to Priya's question about who needs to be at the table?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. I'll just speak to, aside from the bigger funding issue, still it's very important when we're first even in the design phase to have those initial meetings with the custodial engineers at the sites about what the maintenance is going to look like and what, you know, is going into the design, you know, and what they're like I heard said before, what is going to be required. And for instance, you know, putting a big garden in this space, we really want to make sure that schools understand what that means when it comes to maintenance, and we won't force a school garden upon a school that's not ready for that extra maintenance.
Your one key strategy is having your building engineer in early conversations, right? And one challenge though is that sometimes our building engineers or our custodians will shift and they're on a rotation basis within the district. So the schools that actually have one that stays there, and we've had great success in those places where they're there for, you know, decades, taking care of things, looking out for things. But when they're on a rotating basis, that buy-in isn't there.
It can also help to have their bosses, so they're like their districts for custodial engineers, and DSF has, I forgot what their title is, not superintendent, but some anyway, they're like the plant man. I think they're called the plant supervisor, for groups of schools, and it's helpful to have even those guys know what's going on, because they may have other schoolyards that have been transformed, so they know how to help their custodian do what needs to be done or advocate for repairs that TPL can't take care of and stuff like that.
So what I do when we release a new school, I walk the site with the building engineer to talk through the responsibilities, what systems are on the site, things that they can do to kind of ease some of the maintenance pressures on the site, give them tools on directing them who to contact, because part of the issues that our schools have is we have a work order system where we request maintenance. We need this wall painted, or we need the toilets fixed, or they're not used to where to direct the maintenance for a play structure or a safety surface or plants are down. And so I talk with them on who to reach out to, how to facilitate that work to be done. We have 100 things going wrong in every school every minute. So how do you expedite the work to get complete? Because part of what the issue is that when these issues languish and they stay on a school site, it really puts a pressure on the school, and it kind of dampens that excitement for the new schoolyard if a bolt came off the swing and you can't use the swing anymore. So I do presentations and trainings for all that we call them. We have building engineers and then facility area managers, or the people who manage multiple schools. I do trainings with them to bring them up to speed on what stormwater management is, what these systems are, how they function, the maintenance they require, what's at each of the schools, so they become familiar with these systems. So it feels less of a burden to them when they understand how these systems work and what needs to be done and how to they have someone to reach out to. But I also think that you should always create advocates within the school themselves, a teacher, support staff, the principal, because you really need their voice about how transformative these spaces were to really advocate for maintenance funds and continued maintenance on these systems. Because when you have that those teachers saying they're using the space, if they TPL's new project, they call it the park. We let that voice be heard to our COO, that the kids consider this area their park. and they play in it after school. So it's kind of a way to let everyone know the importance of these systems, that these systems need to be maintained just like any other infrastructure you have at your school.
Thanks, Emma. Shannon had a question about how do you balance that tension between standardization, for reduced maintenance, and the goal for students, teachers to have that opportunity to select things that are unique. What's that sweet spot between those two ends of the spectrum?
Kari, did you want to respond to that?
And that's, I guess, a design question. So Kari, you might handle that a lot, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. Although I will say that we use school district and water department standards. And so I think that that's kind of one answer, is that for something like plant material, I think often you do need to go with the tried and true. And when you're looking at these sort of high stress, high pressure situations. But I think where you can really make a schoolyard unique, and where I think the schools are looking to make a schoolyard unique, is usually in programming or in the art or in the types of choices that probably don't actually have that much maintenance consideration, like some of the hardscape type stuff, and leave the plants to something that works. I don't know. That's one thing that I would say.
I think that's fair, and we're seeing more opportunities to approach standardization for reduction in maintenance. I know some of our parks departments have certainly done that for a long time. I bet Joan and Tiffany, you encountered that a lot in New York City. Great. So Priya has another question. Priya, you want to come off chat and read it off?
I don't have another question, but I did see that Meg Kelly had one above my comment further up.
It looks like Emma maybe tried to answer it for me, so I appreciate it. I was just curious, does the school have to set aside the funds individually, or it comes from the district? Sounds like it's coming from the district, but thank you for answering that. I did have another question that I really was having a hard time figuring out how to type, so sorry to just jump in. But so are you, Emma, sort of coordinating just the green schoolyards maintenance for the school district, and how does this interact with other school, or from a district level, right? You have a facilities department or operations or something, and are you a specialized piece of that facilities department, or how are you interacting with the rest?
My position is interesting. When my position was first developed, the grant went through capital, and so I'm technically a capital programs employee. My program funding comes from facilities. My program is within facilities. It's interesting because we also have a maintenance department, and this technically falls in maintenance, but we also have similar programs like this in facilities. So it's kind of a little bit ambiguous on where I truly belong, but right now that's how it works. I'm in capital. My program is housed in facilities. And so it's the budget for my program is coming out of the operations facility budget.
Gotcha. Just one other follow-up question. And then are you outsourcing to non-school district vendors for the maintenance, or are they school district employees?
So they're not school district employees. I'm similar to most of our contracts in the sense that we have a contract that's overseen by a school district employee that is a non-school district company. So all our maintenance, we have limited capacity in the work they do, and then they have a contractor who does the bulk of the work. But I facilitate, I work with, say, our site improvement coordinator on feedback on how designs function and don't function. So I give recommendations on design, but I also work with, strangely, our carpentry department who oversees the contract for safety services and artificial turf and playground, because I inspect all the sites on a regular basis. So I provide them reports on like maintenance that's needed.
Thank you. I mean, Philadelphia School District is very lucky to have you on their team to make sure that the schoolyards look beautiful and are attended to. It would be amazing if all school districts had an Emma Melvin on staff, so that, you know, every child could have a beautiful place to play. And I'm just curious if folks here on this call that are working with school districts or from school districts, if you have somebody who has a role like Emma that is attending to the maintenance and operations of the schoolyards. What other school district has a person like Emma? None?
So I'm from Chicago with our Space to Grow program, and our school district does not have an Emma, but sort of the work that my organization has been doing has been functioning in part the way Emma has been functioning. So connecting the schools to the facilities department to make sure the maintenance is happening, advocating in our facilities department to make sure that we have a dedicated vendor who is specialized in maintaining green infrastructure, which we've been successful in piloting for the last year, which has been working out pretty good so far. And then what we're missing, which this is, I think, critical that Emma does, is those really consistent inspections of all of the sites, because, you know, it's that's the hard part, is continually tracking those and making sure it's getting done.
Thank you, Meg.
We struggle with that too in New York with so many sites, which is, you know, of course, the custodial engineers, we value that relationship so that they report out any problems and we can help them with warranties. But you know, actually now that we have so many, it falls on us to try to get to every site every year, and it's quite a lot to keep up with. And we sometimes can't get to every single site every year. So we have to wait till there's a squeaky wheel to tell us about an issue, which is definitely not ideal.
And that you just reminded me, though, that when we first made our partnership with DEP, there was a discussion about DEP helping with the maintenance funding of the green infrastructure elements. And I think we want to try to raise that again, because they have an interest in those things being maintained. And also, I think they have more funding than other sources. So good reminder, and so interesting to hear about the structure that you have in Philly. It's amazing. It's fantastic. It's like the gold standard of maintenance, it seems to me.
Yeah, I want to chime in. I'm from Austin ISD, our public school system, and I'm the outdoor learning specialist. So I kind of play a role of more like a liaison between all these different departments that sort of handle things, but we struggle a lot with maintenance too, because we have something like 120 campuses, you know, and every campus has sort of a different need. And I'm housed in our STEM department, so I'm technically in academics, but I work really closely with facilities, and we have a sustainability manager in our facilities department that handles more of like physical infrastructure, and we also have a water and energy manager that sort of does those things too. But we have to all communicate together. So I often feel like even though we're in different departments in the district, we are sort of a team in that way. But maintenance is consistently an issue, not just with like green stormwater infrastructure. And we also work really closely with our city watershed department for those things. But our gardens, you know, we really encourage gardens at schools, but those are not maintained by anybody other than the, you know, teachers and students doing that. And so if it's not an active garden, it's really hard to I wish we played a larger role in keeping those spaces maintained for the teachers and students without them needing to handle it themselves. So.
Absolutely. Emma had to jump off. Thank you, Emma, if you're still here for your wonderful presentation. And there you are. Thank you so much. A lot of food for thought. You guys are rocking it in Philadelphia, and I love that. As a Philadelphian, it makes me very happy to be proud of my city. Okay, so one of the reasons why we wanted to have this conversation, we only have a couple more minutes left, is that I think, and maybe you guys can nod if you agree, that there's more room to discuss here, that perhaps maintenance isn't something that has been systematically solved at a federal level. Is that right? Right. So can this team come together in some capacity to raise our voice, to advocate for sustained schoolyard funding? It's something that we need. It's something that's going to help make this more equitable. If it's a barrier that we're seeing in lots of places, it's a barrier around the country. And I feel like, you know, this platform can really do a lot of good work if we all raise our voice together. So if folks are interested, I might put out a call to see who wants to talk a little bit more about what we could do in advocacy in this space, and I'll follow up in the email. But thank you so much for this great conversation today. And now I'm going to turn it over to Priya and Brenda to talk a little bit about logistics for our next meeting.
Thank you, Danielle. Yeah, so we have, I don't have a slide on anything on our date, but we said March. So I know this was, we were initially going to have this conversation in January, but we're now in February. So we want to continue with odd months, hoping that March 23rd would be our next meeting. We'll send out a calendar invite and hoping to topics still to be discussed, but probably municipal bonds. Danielle, I'll be in touch for some potential contacts, but we have some people in mind. We just have to reach out before we settle on that topic. But yeah, so March 23rd, Thursday, March 23rd, 3 p.m. would be our next meeting.
Yeah, and I just want to chime in. Thank you, Brenda, that, you know, one of the reasons that this is bubbled up as a topic it's somewhat timely. So if you aren't someone who's in a city that's looking at or planning a bond initiative, you know, there are a few I know in the CCCN cohort who are thinking about it, especially as they're looking at 2024 as a potential moment. And so this is a great time in that runway to be preparing and thinking about how that might be one way to support your Green Schoolyards programs. And so we're hoping the timing will work out well, whether you're already kind of on that path or maybe it's been bubbling locally, and look forward to hearing from colleagues who've been down that road already.
Oh, that's great. I want to introduce you to David Weinstein. I don't know if you've talked to him yet, but he's worked really hard on the Oakland bond measure, which was very successful. I believe they've secured over $700 million since it passed. And the work TPL did to help with the language and, you know, do the polling and craft that piece. We have a whole team of people who are experts in that. I think the crazy stat is that I think our organization has helped to secure over $90 billion in bond measures across the country, most, you know, land conservation, park creation. And it's exciting to see that this is now a portfolio that's growing for schoolyard work and work with schools in general. So great. All right, well, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation today. This is recorded, so we'll make sure to send it around. And I appreciate that everyone came off mute and, you know, shared your perspective. And I will follow up to continue the conversation.
Thanks, Danielle. Really valuable.